Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Modern Enterprise Architecture Meetup, brought to you by From Here On. So today's topic, Beyond the Blueprint, activating digital data and AI strategy. So good afternoon for those of you in Australia and New Zealand, and good morning to anyone tuning in from UK or Europe if you're up that early. So please introduce yourselves in the comments. Let us know what you do and where you're watching us from. I'm Jana Martins, talent and community lead here at From Here On, and I'll be your host for today. So we designed today's session to tackle a critical gap many organizations face, the space between strategy design and real-world execution. So we all seen great strategy stall, and vision is a one thing, but getting people to engage with it and bring it to life, that's a real challenge. And in this interactive session, Alexis and Scott unpack use cases and share stories from the field about activating strategy in complex environments. And hopefully you'll hear some real stories from organizations navigating these exact challenges and live with practical approach you can apply in your own context. As always, I encourage you to participate. Again, drop your thoughts, questions, or quick hello in the comments, because if you're not saying hi, we don't know that you're here, and it's not nice. So make sure to say hi in the comments. We're live on YouTube and LinkedIn, wherever you're joining us today, so we will see the comments from the both platforms. And we run these sessions regularly, so to create space where architectural thinkers can connect, learn, and exchange some ideas. So it's about growing our community and place where, we can get to think beyond frameworks and share that actually works. So we had some face-to-face events as well. We had a great time in Sydney last week. So if you've been there, please say hi as well. So it was great to see people in real life, and we have some face-to-face events coming as well. That's not it's enough of me. I'm gonna pass it on to our today's speakers to introduce themselves. Please, Alexis, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Jana, and hi everyone. Great to be here today. I'm Alexis. I'm leading the business design and activation practice at From Here On. So spending a lot of time to help organizations to align, design, and activate on change. So to be more digital, data-driven, customer-centric. So usually a mix of architecture, service design, ways of working, and activation. I've been involved in some large-scale transformations, so helping from defining the strategy to activating it. So securing the mandate, launching it, mobilizing, scaling. And some of them was with Scott, so I'm sure we have a few shared stories to tell today. And I just finished some work to help an organization to activate the transformation of their architecture practice, quite a large one. So I think the architect hat would be definitely on today to discuss that topic. Scott.
Thanks, Alexi, and hi, everyone. My name is Scott. I'm a brand experience designer director at From Here On. And I have been, as Alexi said, working across different continents, and the challenges that looking at supporting and solving organizations is really a creative one. So I don't actually identify as a consultant. I bring a creative and experienced lens to transformation and really bring my background in business strategy, marketing, comms, and events. And I've applied that to some of the world's most complex organizations, some of the largest organizations across Europe, Australia, and America, and also some of the smaller impact oriented organizations as an entrepreneur. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Scott. And of course, we said the topic is Beyond the Blueprint, and we're going to share blueprint with you today, or at least some slides. Okay, let's just start with some slides, of course. And Scott, first question to you. Why are we even talking about activation today? Now, what's inspired us to talk about this topic?
So I think it's important to just level set on strategy here, to talk about what that means in this context and what we're talking about. It comes in all different shapes and sizes. And ultimately, the two ends of that spectrum is an intention that's driven out of business drivers or a need to change. And we're seeing that with a particular fervor at the moment with AI, everything, whether it's your board asking for a strategy or whether it's down at the team level. And then going through the journey of actually making that real. And that's the difficult bit. So we're talking about activation, which is essentially the gap between a beautifully written and well thought through strategy and how you actually make that real, turn that into a new reality. And that's the difficult bit. It's a real art and science. Now it's not necessarily new. You could call it execution. That sounds a little medieval. So we like the term and phrase activation. And that's the zone we're going to look at today and explore that with a few examples on how to bring that to life.
And where do we see the biggest gaps in activation in organizations at the moment?
Yeah, so I think just to build on to what Scott said, so it's really about making real from that strategy deck, that initial drive from leadership onto something that is real for the team. So the team can see themselves into it, the one delivering the strategy or being on the receiving end of the change. And so it's, the gap in terms of, right from the start, as soon as you define the strategy, to get people to connect with it in terms of the why, the purpose, to bridge the gap in terms of people to have a say, have their fingerprint on how you shape, you design the direction. But it's also to shape the gap once this is starting to get real. So for people to own it, not forcing the change on people, closing the gap in terms of creating that trust. People need to connect and be able to buy into it. And when you move to execution, even if that sounds a bit medieval, it's how you create a connection for people, what that means for them on day to day in terms of the work to be done, how different. So what's the clear path to execution? And so that activation gap, our take on this is there are some key moments where you need to activate the people to make this real right from the start of defining the strategy. And it's how you think about those moments and it's how you orchestrate those moments that really give your best shot for strategy. It's never linear, it's never perfect, but it's very important to think it from the get-go. And it's really about people, front and center, about who is involved and who owns it. And Scott, I know you got a real strong view on this. Do you want to tell a bit about, the people into the art of this?
Yes. I'm a big advocate for a human-centric and people-first approach. So understanding who different stakeholders are in this equation, in this challenge, in this gap. And it is really about bringing multiple teams and groups together. You can have your change management team, your leadership team, your architecture team, and it's about creating an integrated view of what we're trying to do, and then creating an integrated experience to build trust. And you mentioned that word, Alexi, trust. It's sort of one of those concepts that underpins transformation because it's relationships at the end of the day. And just this morning, a colleague was telling me about two different stakeholder groups that were trying to workshop together, and they fundamentally were coming from a different perspective, and they hadn't actually aligned on strategy. They weren't really at all on the same page. So instantly they were defensive, and they couldn't really meet in the middle. They didn't understand the intention around the workshop, and it just fundamentally didn't work. But I think the important thing in with teams is to understand their different perspectives, and also just to meet them where they are. And and what we've got on the slide here is a few different pathways in which and patterns that we've recognized over the years in which teams can start with the ultimate goal of feeling in flow, working well together, and it feels like that strategy is well and truly in the momentum phase.
Yeah, and I just want to build a bit about what you said about who is involved, especially from an architect perspective. My take on this is architects have a key role to play in that activation space. One thing that stuck with me, I had a conversation a few months back with a chief architect, and a reaction to that frame was, well, I probably spend about 80% of my time in the activation. You know, it's not so much about the strategy deck, the modeling. It's those conversations, the alignment conversations, connecting the dots, and that's really where we see architects to lean into these days. And what I find interesting is that's really starting to put a focus on a lot of soft skills. So the storytelling, the influencing, the business acumen. That's something that is getting more and more important as you lean into that activation space.
Yeah, you guys mentioned trust a few times, and we all know that trust is quick to break and slow to build. We put together a little trust formula, but everyone who's listening, I would love you to actually, if you have your trust formula as well, maybe drop it in the comments. You know, my trust formula probably includes something like, if the people can pronounce my name correctly. Actually, remembering my name already helps. watching 10 of my live streams and maybe divided by the number of times someone said let's catch up for coffee, and it's never actually happened. But yes, Scott, what about the trust formula we have on the screen here?
Yeah, it's probably more of a conversation starter. This is not necessarily true for every organization, but the idea is that you're thinking about what creates the conditions for trust and in an organization. So we've used reliability, visibility, and it's amplified by connection. And there's a set of things that go into each of those. And we've taken a real, if you humanize this, you might think about a colleague or a friend, what does build trust. And it's one of those concepts that's probably much more emotional than logical. So in terms of blueprint and strategy, there's some logically great thinking, but often the emotional side and how people feel and in those interactions, it can take that trust away. And there are other. I saw one, I think last night. Adam Grant, who's a fantastic behavioural psychologist in organisations. His formula was trust equals reliability plus integrity over time. Mm-hmm. So it's about consistency. There was another one that I saw that from a book called The Trusted Advisor, and it was credibility plus reliability plus intimacy, all divided by self-orientation. So that sort of was divided by how self-interested you were. So as an example, one that I remember from the start of a strategy kickoff was a leadership team offsite in London with a large telco, and there was a bunch of new leaders. They had huge portfolios in their own rights, and they had a full offsite day. And we spent that first day and we designed it so that we could create a human connection first. And we designed in an approach to create vulnerability and connecting on an individual level. And then we oriented that into a team context and into the business context towards the end of the day. And it's just one observation and a comment that I remember. We were having a dinner to break bread, so to speak, at the end of the night. And the CFO actually couldn't make it. He got dragged into a board meeting and he just couldn't get out. And he came and he sat down and joined the dinner, and he's just watching everyone. And he turned to me and sort of said, what happened today? What did I miss out on? These are just a completely different group of people, the way they're interacting. And of course, a few wines over dinner is a great way to connect. Fast forward to 2 a.m., I think the CEO was saying that on the dance floor that if anyone goes home, they're fired. So there was a real quick degree of trust built. And then they had to come in the next day a little bit dusty and get into the road mapping and the difficult stuff. So I think there's something about going through those experiences together that forges that degree of trust amongst individuals.
Yeah. And look, before I throw a few thoughts on that trust formula, I think I like your trust formula, Yana, as well. I think I know how to say your last name, so I hope you trust me now. But look, I think I'm curious to see what the audience got to say on this, because I think it's just conversation starter, different formula for different environments. The one that really connects for me, actually a couple of things. The connection, and one is not here, is timing. So connection, I think we've all seen this where, it doesn't matter how clear, logical the strategy is. If people don't believe, don't connect, it's just going to be really hard to make the change stick. And one place where I've seen this played out very well was with a client in healthcare. So they've tried once to go through digital transformation, but that connection didn't happen. And so the second time around, the chief digital officer was very mindful of this. So when he started to define the digital strategy, he really got to think about who were the people that people listened to. And in that organization in healthcare, that wasn't necessarily the executive from the top. That was more the frontline staff. And so what he did is from the start, from the moment of defining the strategy, got them involved, not just to test it, but to co-design it. So they went through a human-centered design process. And essentially, these frontline staff, they became the voice and the face of that digital strategy. And that was really important. That gave the weight, the credibility for them to get started. So that connection, I think it's key. The one I'm not saying here, but I think it's super important is timing. So, right from the time you think about your strategy and roadmap is how fast can you push? And you cannot push harder than the time at which you're going to build the trust. So you really need to pace this out. And a cautionary tale I've seen in that space was with an architecture team, actually, where they were just started a big transformation and they were given an elevated mandate to be a driving force in shaping that transformation, but they didn't earn that mandate. They didn't have that level of trust, the connection, the relationship, and that backfired pretty quickly. I think we'd have seen in a few places. So 18 months in, essentially, the whole team got disbanded. So a bit of a around that trust, yes.
Another couple that we haven't got in here, but I think are really important perspectives. One is authenticity. I think people can smell when someone's being insincere, and there's a certain degree of transparency and honesty and openness in that. And the other one, that I value in when the whole world is change fatigued is good energy. When you bring good energy and intention, it's really contagious, and it's hard to sit back and be a skeptic when someone brings really good energy to a session.
That's true.
Matthew Jackson has also mentioned authenticity in his formula. So, and good energy. We always bring good energy on these live streams. So quick way to build trust. And Alexis, also, the hot topic, AI strategy. How do you apply this, trust formula to AI strategy these days?
Yeah, I guess that's very topical. I guess most organizations are really leading to how to define, how to activate the AI strategy. What I'm seeing a lot is the issue is less with tech. It's actually with that trust element. So getting people to believe in the value they can get from AI, getting them to believe with the staff we can drive it. And so I think we've seen quite a lot of places, and a lot of them are already in flight in this. It's sort of a two-speed activation model. So on one hand, you need to start by demystifying AI and just get some quick wins, demonstrate value, and at the same time start to think about the next level. So start to build the foundation. So quick wins, you can deploy Copilot, you can look at some internal automation. What's important is do it in a way that you can demonstrate some value. So think of the metrics, whether it's reduction in cost to serve or other things. Use this as a bit of education, storytelling, and at the same time start to think about those foundations. So, the talents, the architecture, the governance as you're going to scale and industrialize, the data foundation. So that sort of two-speed activation, I think that's quite relevant in the AI game these days.
And Alexi, just a point on all of this coming into an organization. You're not starting fresh. There's an existing culture. There's existing set of planning cycles, meetings, rituals. And so an important statement just with that journey line across this is that it really needs to be integrated into the business. And it's not like you're looking to create change with additional work. You're looking to integrate using a real system design and design thinking mindset and skill set to go from where you are and where you want to be, but you're actually designing for the system itself, and you really need to create that that capability set over time. You do need to start somewhere and meet them where they are, but that we've just found that integrating to build trust and understanding what exists and what's important to people is really important.
Maulik is also mentioning that POCs are a great way to earn trust. People connect better than something they can see, test, and experience.
Yeah, I mean, POC or prototype is one of my favorites. It's real, especially if you're at the start of a strategy, and just to make it real, people, to demystify, and it's fun as well. People can see themselves into it. It's a great way to communicate the value you can get across that change.
In addition to a proof of concept or a prototype where you can see yourself, often when we're positioning this type of approach, especially with the architecture teams, they want to understand what the journey looks like end to end. And I've only ever had the pleasure of working with a couple of clients who've just said trust the process and had a culture that was all ready to lean into it. But generally, we use visual storytelling a lot just to paint the picture of what it might actually feel like. And if you're able to paint that picture of the journey, it just helps with the onboarding. And if people understand what they're getting themselves into, they're far more likely to jump in.
The trust formula is great. Let's talk a little bit more about what it actually means in practice, and how do we make those changes real. The activation engine, here we go.
Yeah, well, look, this is what we call the activation engine. So I guess it's our take on the things that you need to have in place to make those activation moments happen, to help build trust. And I guess the key thing is, think of this as capabilities, organizational capabilities that you need to have in place. You need to invest, you need to uplift, you need to run, you need to grow. It's not a one-off thing. It's not a playbook. And, the shape of this obviously is going to be specific for your organization, where you are. And you already have some of this. You already have some cadence. So it's really about understanding what you can integrate, what you can cut out. But I think in the spirit of, beyond the blueprints and activating, it's probably best to talk through this with some real case studies. So I might just do some super quick call outs, and I think we'll get into the action. So a few things that we see as really important to get this activation engine in place. The right in the center is that concept of the dynamic roadmap or road mapping. So how to keep your strategy, your plan alive? How do you have this mechanism of the feedback loop to get from delivery back to your portfolio, back to strategy? So, are we still on track? Do we need to course correct? What are we learning from the ground? What are the changes we need to respond to? That adaptive governance, so really being clear about, the type of decisions that you want to drive at what speed. So making a trade-off between the speed, the innovation, and the risk, and just getting the right level of friction in the system. And the operating cadence. So really make sure that you've got a rhythm, you build that momentum, and a way to check whether you are starting to drift from your ambition to the intent. So that's sort of a bit of a conceptual view, but I think it's probably best if we get straight into some case study to bring this to life.
Yeah, let's get into some specific scenarios. And I guess while Scott and Alexis will talk us through examples, I'm actually really curious to hear from the audience. What's the most common scenarios you've seen in your career? Which one you really resonate? Which one has really resonated? So yeah, please share with us your scenarios as well. Over to you guys for some examples.
Thanks, Jana. So looking at these different examples, there's a few different scenarios in which we typically come across, and one is the priming the activation engine, which is starting often a new leadership team and kicking a strategy into play. Or there's a shift gear scenario where that's probably more around you've got some good traction and you're looking to scale. You're actually looking to take it a lot further. And then the third scenario is about a bit of a reset. So something's not quite working, you go back to really focus on alignment. With the Prime the Engine, you're really looking at the strategy, activation, vision setting, looking at some different cultural anchors that you can leverage there. One of the projects I got to work on in London with one of Europe's largest retailers was really about bringing about a completely new way of working to an IT department, restructuring, which was a top-down business strategy that we had to align to. And we're working with a fantastic leader by the name of Rachel Hyam. She really understands how to, and she phrases it as creating a movement. And she thinks about it to how do you really shift hearts and minds from where they are. This was a former public service company, so the culture was fairly laissez-faire, and it was a huge business. It was 120,000 people, and I think the fundamental thing that we did differently was create a PR engine for this project, for this transformation program. And we looked at all of the different touch points or activities we could do. So we created a custom brand and created an identity for this project. I think part of the thinking is to build trust and belief. You want to actually do something different, act in the way you intend to be. So the more immersive you can make it, to run boot camps and experiences to demonstrate this different way of working, the more you can make it visible. So we set up 9 different physical design rooms around Europe, which operated as hubs for the program. We had themed events. There was an event where the leaders were dressed up as adventurers with their pickaxes and little Aussie hats with the corks on. We had videos. There's a moment in India or a photo that I saw where they were training the team in a football stadium. There was 600 staff members wearing purple T-shirts that were branded under this project. So I think that some of those techniques around visualization, storytelling, and immersion, and how you run those different events, and you design them in such a way that they create that belief, they create that energy, and they create that point of difference. And it eventually ended up as a program that was the second most in focus project at the board level. And there were people from around the business saying that they wanted to get involved. And I think that's the power of PR when you invest in that part of the engine.
Yeah, I really like that story, how you thought about activation from strategy. And I think, getting people wanting to be on board, the fear of missing out, it's a good measure of momentum building as well. So that's a good thing to be on the lookout for. Let me shift gear on this. So let's take you through the next case study. So once you got that traction in place, then it's often about how you start to embed and scale this across not just technology but the business to a point where it's part of the culture, it's part of the DNA. I really like that case study. So this is with a large financial organization that we worked with, and for them it was about activating tech modernization. And they've done something that I think in some ways is pretty world leading, and the operators are very supportive of. So where this started was the technology debt had accumulated over the years to a point where it was not sustainable. And that came up to a point where it was a concern at the board level, and there was some potential implication for the operating license. So they had to respond quite quickly. So part of the tech strategy was really to tackle that tech debt through a structured modernization effort. So the way they got started to embed this was really with creating visibility, which I think was one of your elements on the formula. So they use one key metric around the tech debt. So for them, it was aligned to the assets. And this was really a key way to start providing that visibility, common language, and to report this back to the board to build a bit of confidence. Architects had a key role to play in defining and embedding that metric. So, for example, in the roadmap trade-off conversation between legacy investments or long-term. But that didn't quite land with the business. So they were still quite tech-centric. So in terms of shifting gear for them, what they looked to embed this further was to evolve that metric onto what was called the tech monetization score. So applying more for business plans and to look at this in terms of tech risk, but also the criticality for the business and execution, and really starting to infuse this in the business conversation, like investment decision and so on. And the next gear for them, which is one I really love, is how then they use this to embed this in the culture. And the way they've done this was to take that metric, the tech monetization score, and to define this as a core KPI on the score count. And that score count that was tied to the bonus pool for everyone, not just tech, but the business as well. And so what that means is that shifted from being a tech concern to a shared accountability. And so that definitely did drive a new culture. And tech monetization now is not just a tech concern; it's a business concern as well. So I found this is a great example on how you can embed at scale and get this as part of your DNA today. So that was around shifting gear as one case today. And now let's talk about the last one, which is, what happens when, I think a lot of you will have seen this, when, you halfway through the transformation, but it just feels hard. People are working hard. Some people are getting burnt out, and it's not quite clear whether you're making a dent, whether you are starting to make results and align with the strategic outcomes that you aspire to. And you can see a bit of a drift. Like, if you look at the portfolio, you might have more of a loose collection of projects, and that connection is quite clear. So we had this case today with a client of us. So they are an impact-driven organization, and for them, they recognized that they were somewhere through transformation, but they were not going to get there within the time and budget. So they had to press and really realign. For them, it was an alignment thing. So realigning the leadership, technology, delivery onto what do we need to do, what are the key trade-offs we need to make. And the way they got started around this as a moment of activation was with a big room planning event. So as it says on the tin, this was a big room. So the idea was really to get everyone to have this conversation and things that you can unpack face to face that would be hard with a spreadsheet. And one key thing for them was really to create that reality check that they had create that sense of urgency. So one thing I really like is when you step into the room, you had this massive roadmap on the wall. I think that was like 15 meters long from the floor to the ceiling. You had about 400 work packages maps there, and very heavily indexed on the first year. So straight away you have this reaction that, wow, that's a lot. It's over indexed on year one. We're overloading the system. We need to do something about it. And part of this also was really to help shift the conversation from battle of allocations to focusing on the value. So there were some moments, like some workshop activities where people use a piece of string and connect work packages with outcomes. And there was a great conversation with a GM say, now I understand the work you're doing, how this is going to help me achieve my targets. And actually, I can break it down differently so we can get something happening earlier and we can resequence this. So all those conversations, that was really important to have them face to face. That's not something you could have done on a spreadsheet. Where they landed was not, they haven't solved everything. And in some way it was pretty better outcome is, they agreed that they had to change the way they think about it, focus more on value. And they also framed this as, this was not going to fix everything, but it was the start of them getting back on course. And since then, they're starting to introduce quarterly planning, operationalize some governance bodies as well. And you can see that momentum is building back as well. So anyway, there was a bit of an overview of different case studies, and yeah, quite curious to see how that resonates with the audience, and whether they've seen other case studies.
Alexis, just a little note on that one, because we knew it was going to be challenging coming into that session when you're talking financials and projects across the business, and you have to reduce the budget by a third and push things back. I think there's a real power in co-developing the framework in which you prioritize as a team, and then creating some empathy and shared understanding by rotating teams and rotating contexts. And also with that event, even though it was a difficult one to get through, just the process of getting through that as a team can really forge some trust. And not only that, I think they had a bit of fun at the same time. I don't think anyone's come up with a good excuse as to why you can't have fun and get some work done at the same time.
Thank you for some examples. And yes, still a question to our audience: which examples resonates the most? Sean's saying that shift gears is one of the favorite, but he resonates with all three. So yeah, guys, put it in the comments. Let us know what's resonate. We have a few questions coming through. We're gonna jump to questions in a second. Just the last thing, I guess. How do we bring all these activation layers together to life? We put the examples. Let's put it all together.
Yeah, and we could call this our choreography layer, and that's where the real art is, in how you pull these different concepts together and you design a journey. And you can see different touch points or moments or interactions or interventions or opportunities to connect with different groups and mixed groups, in order to look at that strategy rollout and those phases that you go through, and creating that iterative approach to building momentum. And you're also very conscious of the emotional layer, the levels of trust and the level of activation over time. And you can often anticipate a fairly severe dip after the initial joining, when it gets really hard. So you can actually design for that, and then you pick the right type of interaction. You look at your timing, you look at your different groups, and it's a real choreography challenge.
And maybe if I bring this to life as the actual example, you see this. This was to activate the transformation for a very large architecture practice. Just to give you a scale, 200 plus architects, a very large, complex organization, number of domains, a very technically complex environment. And for them, that strategy of the transformation of the architecture practice was pretty clear. They wanted to be more strategic, so they wanted architecture to be a driving force to influence the tech strategy, the business strategy. They wanted to move up from detailed solution design to look at reuse opportunities across the enterprise, better support alignment across domains. So that strategy was clear, but they've tried twice to transform before, and that didn't quite work. So they were very mindful that activation and getting people through that journey was really important. And so where we started, you see those activation moments, was really to be clear about what was going to make a difference. So for them was to create the internal alignment between the leadership team, creating a community of architects engaged, and for them to understand the opportunity with the strategy, but also to really create that connection from architects and their customers within the organization. Whether that's your CIO, people in delivery, in the business, in the enabling function. So having those conversations to get the customers to feel heard, to explain their jobs to be done, and for architects to understand where the value is and where they need to focus more on. And so that really landed well with a human-centered design process, which we can see as the activation orchestration layer. So as the way to really bring those different moments together. And then, as Scott said, there was this momentum building where we could track, across the journey, how this momentum was being built within the team, but also the trust that you're starting to build with the broader community. So quite a neat way to bring those different concepts together to activate the change.
And Alexis, you said that it was quite a difficult marker who you presented this progress to, and everyone was almost shocked when you'd gone through this process, and the tools and process you'd run, the level of buy-in, the level of clarity. It was almost a hang on, there's something wrong here moment.
And I think part of this is it felt real. It felt real for the people, and this was really owned by the people, and they felt it to a point where they could communicate this with their customers. I think that authenticity, that's something that comes through that work.
Perfect. And with quite a few questions coming through, but maybe we'll just really, really quickly touch on about some, the toolkit. Who doesn't like a good toolkit? So let's just quickly maybe just point your favorite before we jump to the questions.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a set of tools, and Alexi was talking about some scorecards and some metrics and some enablers before. There's a number of different tools and techniques and tactics that you can use to support the change journey. For me, my go-to is really around immersive experiences, whether that's a hackathon where you actually got your hands on and you're building something, or it's a custom event that integrates with the annual planning cycle, but it feels different. And I think what we've learned with that is to really take you out of your office and change location. And we've been really creative with locations. It's actually interesting to reflect on all through COVID. There was a lot of hybrid or virtual meetings. I mean, we've run events in virtual reality before. We've hired boats. We've hired Airbnbs. We've gone, there's something about changing your location to make it feel different from the very get-go. And it can often open people up a bit. They feel a bit more open to something new. Yeah.
I was going to say prototype, but I think that was mentioned earlier. So maybe another one I really like is the concept of the academy. And I think, you all have seen this in different flavor, whether it's the architecture academy or the tech academy or digital academy. But really think of this as, there is a lot of skills you need to activate, and as you lean into the new world. And think of this as, curriculum of change, and having some, tailored learning pathways for the different teams, whether it's as practitioners or as leaders. That's really something that, you need to learn by doing, and that needs to be backed up by the structure.
Perfect. Let's quickly jump to a few questions before we go to some final thoughts as well. Here's a question from Matthew. If we put activation between strategy and execution, does it mean that we can define our strategy in less detail? The pathway to achieve goals are co-designed.
I would say it's probably, a different pace of defining and designing the strategy. So right from the outset, you get people to be involved and get their fingerprints. So, in some ways you might say that you slow down the initial process, but you get that traction, which is going to be a win in the long term. So I think you still need to figure out where you want to go, but also part of the activation is creating those feedback loop. So, define enough to get that direction, clarity around the short term, but enable yourself to get that feedback loop as you go. I think that's another important part here.
I think also any strategy written today does need to be dynamic to a degree. It's got to be able to evolve. The market conditions are changing. So that directional setting is really important, and working with the systems and structures within your business. But there is a just enough element, and particularly in the governance space.
Thank you, Matthew. I hope we answered your question here. I want to really quickly jump to Namit question, and apology if I pronounce the name incorrectly. That doesn't build the trust here. So any tips of building trust quickly, specifically when you have parachute into in-flight project, no opportunity to dance till 2 a.m. Do you have like your favorite little tip?
Yeah, I think on the quickest is to show vulnerability and to share the challenge. I think the more authentic and transparent you can be in that space, and you open the conversation so it's a problem shared, then I think that's a great way to just humanize the conversation and build some trust quickly.
Yeah, and hopefully you don't get parachuted onto a dancing floor at 2 a.m. for this. I think what I would add to this is really think out about what's the value you can provide and trying to organize the work, but also some metrics so you can demonstrate the value and you can report on it. That obviously helped to build that trust from the get-go.
I think to build on that again, Alexi, if you take a curious and empathetic approach and you try and understand how they feel, what they're thinking, what they need to do in their context, and you start the conversation there, then it's an easy conversation for them because it's about their context.
There's one more question from Colin, coming back to activation engine. So building on the engine analogy, what would you think could be the flywheel? Good architecture, clear OKRs, aligned to the strategy. What else comes to mind?
Yeah, I think in some ways, if you look at that middle layer, it's a flywheel, right? And I guess you could think of all of those capabilities as having compound effects. And it's really getting this working well in sync, and this is where the momentum and the rhythm gets important. But I think one thing that is really underpinning this is architecture in terms of having that that clarity, that line of sight to connect that top level strategy to how you break it down at the program, the portfolio level, the investment, down to providing enough guardrail for the team to operate at speed, creating the safe space, the other side, but also having that feedback loop. So as you got learnings, you can quickly learn and adapt. So I'll say, think of this holistically, and architecture is a key backbone to make this happen at speed.
Yeah. And we're sort of running out of the time, but feel free to drop the last question in the comments. And also, obviously, feel free to connect with the team. You can do it by using the QR code, or I'll also just put the link in the comments from hereon.com/activation with more resources will be coming into this page, and also is a quick way to connect with Scott and Alexis, or of course you can just connect with them on LinkedIn too. Also, guys, I guess my last question would be: is there one thing you want to leave the audience with after this session? What would be like the main takeaway from today?
Yeah, so I think really think of activation as key moments, and it's never too early. You can have that moment straight from the time you define the strategy. It's don't over-engineer it as well. It's better to get started, get some momentum, and it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be linear, but it's more about progress over perfection. And I think as architects, you have a key role to play in this. So in some ways, seize the moment, seize the activation moments as an architect, I would say.
Scott, what about you?
I would encourage everyone to take action, not ironically with activation, but I think we're in this era of a prototype and soon to be simulation. So your ability to experiment and adapt, I think, is really important. You talk about the trust element, and one day we may be trusting workflows and technology to actually make decisions on our behalf. So I think it's really important to understand your role as a change agent and a human in the loop in what's becoming more and more automated and augmented, underpinned by all this cool technology. You can notice I'm trying not to say AI, but I think it's just get out there, start prototyping, understand what value is. And I think as your role as almost context engineers is to pull together those threads and curate experiences for people. So I just encourage you to get on. I think fundamentally talk is cheap. It's never been cheaper than today, and tomorrow it's going to be cheaper. So what you do is going to be more important than what you say, I think.
Perfect. Few more comments coming through on LinkedIn, guys. We do see your comments, and if we didn't reply to a question, we do it offline after this session. We're running out of time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Just the usual housekeeping. We do run these sessions monthly, and we do have a next event booked for September, and the next event is another exciting topic, is about decision making for modern architects and cutting through complexity. So in our next discussion, we're going to explore the people side of architectural decision making. And it's, again, about these real world moves that can help you navigate complexity, build trust, and make the right call then it counts. So, and obviously, you want to make sure you don't miss this session. And what you can do, you can, of course, join our meetup group. We have groups in Australia, New Zealand, UK. So make sure to join the group by your location, because, as I mentioned before, we do have face-to-face events as well. If you miss the Sydney event, well, you will have opportunity to join us in Melbourne. So the next face-to-face event will be in Melbourne at the end of the year, so around December. So keep an eye. If you don't want to miss it, again, join the meetup group, and of course, follow us on LinkedIn as well, because we always post these sessions on LinkedIn too. If you're looking for some exciting new opportunities in enterprise architecture, or maybe AI architecture, yes, there's a new thing now. So feel free to connect with me, or message me on LinkedIn, or you can also, you know what to do, email us at talent@fromhereon.com and get in touch. Of course, again, if you want to talk with Scott and Alexis, you can jump on our website, or you can just connect with them on LinkedIn too. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for your participation, comments. We'll make sure to reply to the rest of line. I can see a lot of comments, thank yous coming on LinkedIn as well. Thank you for all your highs and thumbs up. And Scott, just to put you on the spot, just last thing that you want to leave our audience with from today's session.
Geez, you have put me on the spot, Jana. I'd say go and check out some of the other sessions that Jana has saved on the YouTube channel or LinkedIn. Do drop some comments in. I'm actually really looking forward to going through the comments. There's just so much ground that we weren't able to cover, and I'd love to explore that with any and all of you. So yeah, have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you, Jana, and thank you, Alexi.
And that's a really good point, Scott. Like, if you guys feel like we need to bring these type of sessions again, and it's something we didn't cover, and I'm always gathering some thoughts about future topics and future ideas. So please message me as well. Like, if you think we need to bring similar topic on one of those live discussions, would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, or just message us directly. Anyway, thank you everyone again, and enjoy your afternoon or morning if you're in Europe. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.